John Mayer has given a lot of great advice about getting better at the guitar over the years, but I think his best piece of advice has to do with guitar soloing and how to really create beautiful melodic lead lines and guitar solos based on locking in with the backing track. Now, this piece of advice came from one of his many, live streams that I feel like took place in the 2017 to 2019 realm. I might have that, wrong a little bit because it has been hard to locate that exact soundbite. But it's all about locking in with the backing track. However, because he's such a great guitar player, sometimes, and you may have already had this experience, you have a teacher or you're playing with somebody who's really, really excellent, and they're trying to show you something, they're trying to tell you something that they conceptualize, and it's just not clicking with you because they're a little too advanced to really bring it to our level, right? So what I'm gonna do is I will bring it to our level as far as taking this advice and showing you how you can really use it to your advantage. So locking in with the backing track so that you can use chord changes and things like that to your advantage inside of your guitar solos and your lead lines. So grab your guitar, let's jump in and go over this really great concept. What's up, guitar players? My name's Guthrie with Easy Guitar Practice. Like I said, we're going to be jumping into some really great advice that John Mayer gave to increase your soloing capabilities. And it's all about locking in with the chord progression that you're playing over. And it's really all about hearing it without needing to play it, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give you a really simple chord progression. It's going to be the example that I'll be using, but I want you to remember that this goes for any progression you're going to be playing over. So grab your guitar and feel free to noodle along with me, but don't feel like you need to always come back to this progression to practice this skill. But that is the goal here, is to figure out how to refine this skill so that you can use it to lock in inside of jam scenarios, gig scenarios, things like that. All right, so the chord progression is basically going to be, what I would call the Stand By Me progression, and it's going to be in the key of G. Now, if you haven't checked out my video on how to map out the neck, I'll link it right here because I use the framework of the key of G, G major / E minor, relative major / minor scales, and could be helpful for you in this specific scenario. And of course, when you want to move around to other keys. But the progression is this. Let's do it again. Now, what we're going to try to do is just think about that progression. And what's nice about just thinking about it is you can slow it down or speed it up based on, your feel for moving around the neck, your approach to soloing, things like that. But the goal with locking in with the backing track or the chord progression or whatever scenario you're in is to be able to, slowly at first figure out, where do I want to play? What do I think sounds good over this? And the newer you are, the more time it's going to take to ask yourself, okay, that progression was G, E minor, C, D, G, restart, okay? So G, E minor, C, and D. Now, if you only have one pentatonic shape under your fingers, you'll have to figure things out using just that shape. You'll be just confined to a smaller position. That's okay, right? You can still work through things in that scenario. Knowing that we're in G, E minor, C, and D, gives us something really valuable to work in. So a C shape, I'm kind of playing the simple bar chord, could also be played up here. And if you're thinking about the G major scale, right? That C note is in the mix. All right, so I've got maybe something that I'm already thinking of. And like I said, it takes time to separate yourself from the progression, playing in rhythm, and just consider what these changes mean. And like I said, as you get better at doing this with different progressions, you will be able to lock in faster. But it takes some time, and that's where I think John Mayer kind of skipped over, like, well, how do you actually put this concept into practice if you're a little bit newer and you're looking to get to that place where you're as confident and fluid with your playing as he is? Not saying that we're ever going to get there, but how do we try to chip away at that skill? All right, so I know that C is there. There's C. And I know D is here, right? If you think about this D shape, this is the D note, right? And so one octave up, there's D. There's D, there's C, there's G, all right? And E is up here. Here it is again. Here it is again. Here it is again. Here it is again. All right. So being familiar with the notes on the neck is of course important, but all of this stuff takes time. So if you're just conceptualizing it based on the pentatonic shape instead of the major shape, well, that's okay too. You can still, think about the progression. Right? Just think about how that sounds. Sorry for my poor singing capacity in this context. And just start playing around. G, E minor, C, D, so something a little different. G, so as I'm kind of sounding it out, no pressure, I'm so bad at, taking some deep breaths and pauses. What's nice about this approach is that it's kind of baked in. You're supposed to take those pauses. Think about the G. Relatively simple, but that didn't sound bad. What happens so often when we have the backing track going, we could start feeling the pressure of like, no dead noise. I got to get, all of this stuff going. Whereas when it's just us and we're conceptualizing, we're thinking about the progression, right? I'm kind of stealing the vocal melody. That sounds pretty good. And then you can ask yourself again, where do I go? I kind of keep doing this like little fill to end on G. Okay, I like that. Let's go for that. Let's play with that. Let's experiment with that. Let's remember that's something I want to come back to, and that's how I like to finish my solos off. Give a little like final phrase and boom, it's done, right? They always say like, Paul McCartney talks about, Roy Orbison giving like a final like, big note, and then boom, it's done, so that you know that it's finished. Okay, well, maybe that's my approach. But the whole idea is that you're just hearing it in the back, and I know I'm kind of hammering this, but that's really how you start to do it. Slow it down. methodical, okay? Identify if you make slip-ups, why did that happen? Did you try to get too complicated? Did you fall out of rhythm with the changes? And then, over time, bring the backing track back in, right? So if I was playing this, with the true backing track on, I'd pause it, I'd think about things for a little while. If you're really trying to increase your soloing capacity, put it on, memorize kind of the progression, think about it, pause, right? Pause whatever song you're playing to, backing track, have your friend try something out for yourself, pause, nothing in the background, and then start thinking about what you'd like to do. Think about the changes that are happening in the back of your mind instead of there's something going on in the background, I've got to keep up with it, and I've got to make sure there's no dead space. Think of a singer. It's such a good way to think of things. How would a singer do things? Well, they would pause to take a breath. When the night, pause, is young, pause. And the land is, right? Think about that. We all love that song. It's a classic. But he's not singing and going wild with every note under the sun. So same thing with your solos. And I do think that this allows you to kind of get that, into your system, just conceptualizing things with the backing track, turning it off, doing it without the backing track, turning it back on, and, getting that into your system. And like I said, being able to ask yourself, what are the chords in this progression? And what are some of the notes that, go over that chord progression? What are some of the chord tones I can hit? Is there an arpeggiation, an arpeggio that I can, mess with? Is there something that I want to do with that texture? Do I just like the scale stuff? Do I want to try something bluesy? All those things you can ask yourself, while you're thinking about the progression. And it also just helps you get more musical and think about things, in a little bit of a deeper way, as opposed to I just need to get every note down. I just need to get the scales that I know. I know a few arpeggios. Well, wait, what's going to work? How can I blend them? Things like that. So now I feel like I'm just going in circles and talking over myself, but it's an interesting one. So just chew on it. And I hope it was helpful. And I will see you on the next one. Like and subscribe if you found it helpful. Peace. And happy guitar playing to you all.